Good morning. How is everyone today for our second day of Family History Days here at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania? Thank you all for coming. I never worry about attendance at German-themed genealogy lectures, so a pretty much full house is kind of normal. At some of the national conferences, we're often able to do a full-day track of different German genealogy lectures. There's some people who come to camp for the 8 a.m. lecture and just stay all day through the various lectures. This particular presentation, called Contrasting German Migrations, the nut of it is how, when you're talking about German immigration, you're really talking about two very distinct and very different ways. And for a lot of people, when you're starting out, if you're not so lucky to have been gifted a village of origin for your German ancestors, a lot of times all you know maybe is that they came in the 1700s or they came in the 1800s. And so this presentation is premised on that you at least know that much, and to give you kind of some rules of thumb of where you might be able to go from that. My particular ancestry, all except for one couple, is from the first wave. I have one couple that came in the 1800s. Also, probably not coincidentally, that couple of mine that came in the 1800s are the only city folk among my ancestors. The rest were all rural, out in the country. Just about all my folks are from Berks County, Pennsylvania, Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, and adjoining counties. I have personally been on trips to Germany 5 times, and I've always found the Germans to be very very welcoming people, especially if you are visiting a village of your ancestors. Probably I've got several good stories, but one of the best. I was visiting the Rhineland town of Sprendlingen, and sampling some of their wonderful local wine at an outdoor cafe for lunch, and just happened to use my little bit of German communicating with the proprietor's wife's little bit of English, and said, "Ich habe Vorfahren in dieser Stadt." And she says, "Oh, well, you must go meet the mayor." And as a matter of fact, she quickly sent me over to the Rathaus. She said, "Come back here. We'll do a wine tasting afterwards." But he's leaving for the weekend. This was like 1 in the afternoon on Friday. That was a good indication on German mayors that they're not always the workaholics. Let's just put it that way. But so I got to the Rathaus. The mayor was a very affable individual. His English was also pretty good, so we were using that. And I said, "Well, I'm a descendant of the Rottmachers from this town." He said, "Oh, a very prominent family." And I said, "Well, I'm also a descendant of the Strunk family." He said, "Oh, a very prominent family." And I said, "Well, and I have a third family. I'm also a descendant of the Machers." And he says, "Oh, a very large family." I never did find out what the additional background that he might have been able to give me on that. They had all left in the 1700s as part of the first wave. The first thing when we're contrasting the two waves is in terms of what historians call them. Historians generally refer to the first wave as Pennsylvania Germans. And as you'll see, not necessarily just about all of them came through the port of Philadelphia. Not all of them stayed in Pennsylvania, but there was a kind of a greater Pennsylvania that extended beyond the boundaries of the colony and later the state. And they're a different breed than the so-called German Americans. That is what historians generally refer to the second wave as. And the very first big contrast between the two groups is in terms of total numbers. The first wave was only about 80,000 people who came starting actually in the late 17th century and through the Revolution. Whereas the German Americans, you're talking about about 5 million people who came in the 1800s, basically through the beginning of World War I would be the greater second wave. Now, interestingly enough, because of the 3 to 5 generation head start that the Pennsylvania Germans had, it's roughly equal numbers of people in America today who descend from each of the waves. So again, you think of the classic genealogy pyramid of starting with one couple and building out. Well, as I said, the Pennsylvania Germans with those extra generations, there's an awful lot of people, despite the small beginning numbers, who are descended from them. Now, we're going to look at all sorts of different contrasts, and again, the value is if all you know is when they came over as a starting point, then this gives you some additional rules of thumb. In every case, they are just rules of thumb. There are people who are exceptions to the rule, but what are we as genealogists if not people who try to make the haystack smaller somehow or the needle bigger to stick out? But we're going to look at the geography of where they came from, their motivations in an economic class. We can't help but talk about religion mostly because church records are pivotally important in German genealogy. Whether you're first wave or second wave, they're going to be pivotally important. If it's second wave people, even if it's late second wave people where there were civil vital records kept in Germany, across Germany starting in the 1870s, you're going to want to go back further than that, and when you go back further than that, it's going to be church registers that were vital record substitutes. Also the aspirations and circumstances, and finally we'll go into some of the, just the broad brush of the most important sources of information about the two groups, which also varies. So when we look in terms of geography as far as where the first wave folks came from, and on the map I draw strictly as circles because if you know anything about the history of the German states, is that it's complicated when you start thinking about it, and it only gets more complicated from there. There were some 1,600 independent states in Germany in the late Middle Ages and early modern times. And their borders were constantly shifting, as one particular dynasty would die out, and its cousins of the dynasty would inherit their lands, or maybe some of their lands would go to one cousin, and others would go to a different one. So you have loads of states that were even non-contiguous. But I draw them as circles because their borders over time changed just about constantly. So the Palatinate, or in German, the Pfalz, that was a prime starting point for immigration in the 1700s. Also, the tiny modern German state of the Saarland, Baden, Württemberg, and Alsace, which is now in France, but historically was an area, a battleground area that went back and forth. It was an independent state for a long time. It was part of the Second German Empire from 1871 to 1918, and is also had an individual who was questioning me yesterday. Well, were the Alsatians French or German? And the best answer I have is neither. Yeah, is that they were Alsatian. And many of the people spoke both languages, and depending on the rulership at the time, the records may be in either French or German. In addition to recognizing this cluster that you see here in southwestern Germany as the places that the first wave came from, it's also significant to note that because this area, the southwestern German area, was very much destroyed in the 30 Years' War, that was from 1618 to 1648, as the French and the Austrians tramped back and forth across southwestern Germany and leaving many areas desolated. After the 30 Years' War was over, as a way of trying to recover from the population loss, some of the nobility of these small states invited Switzers to come down from the mountains into the Rhine Valley area. So you have a fair number of people who then leave for America a couple of generations later, who had not been in what we recognize today as Germany a long time. They had only been in there a couple of generations, and prior to that, they were German-speaking Swiss. So you now, thankfully, in a lot of the church registers, they will note those origins in Switzerland, including the town names. But as a matter of fact, my own surname Beidler, in Europe, it's generally rendered as something like Beutler or Beutler, and I'm almost dead sure that that's going to end up in Switzerland. But I can't get them out of the Palatinate. In the late 1600s is the earliest chronological record that I have. But when I do things like do a family search, a database search, a family search, the huge numbers of Beutlers from the Swiss cantons of Bern and Zurich, and relatively few in modern day Germany. So I'm pretty sure that's where it's going to end up, but I need a connection to a guy named Bernhard Beutler. So if anyone's got one, pass it on. So that's the geography of the first wave. Then the second wave, things shift dramatically. And it's not to say that those areas of southwestern Germany didn't still supply immigrants in the 1800s. They absolutely did. But again, as a rule of thumb, if you don't know where they came from, you just know they came in 1850 or 1880. Places that you're going to look are the Kingdom of Saxony, Pomerania, part of which is now in Poland, Brandenburg, the area around Berlin. That was the Prussian heartland, and then the large state of Bavaria in southeastern Germany. So you can see, compared to the first wave, where it was a very compact southwestern German into France area that they came from. It's much more spread out in the 1800s or early 1900s with the second wave. In terms of departure, in the 1700s, just about all of the immigrants left from the Dutch port of Rotterdam. They're coming from southwestern Germany. They used the Rhine River as the superhighway of the 1700s, because nearly all of them did travel by small ships on the Rhine till they got to the Netherlands. And in the 1800s, it shifts. They use Bremerhaven, the port of the city-state of Bremen, and Hamburg. Those are their prime immigration points. It's estimated that about half of those leaving the European continent in the 1800s sailed out of Bremerhaven, and about a third sailed out of Hamburg. The unfortunate facts, and I give you the bad news early on before you get too hopeful. You want a route that they actually came out of Hamburg, because Bremen's records, for the most part, have been destroyed, and everybody starts by thinking that must be bombs. Well, it's more complicated than that. A lot of the early departure records from the port of Bremerhaven were destroyed by the Germans themselves. Germans sometimes are too methodical for their own good. They were running out of storage space. And I know I always get the groans because you know where this is going. In the 1870s, they decided they were running out of storage space and they would only save the current year and the 2 previous years. And then as the new year approached, then they ditched the previous one, so they only ever had 3 years. And that continued till the early 1900s, when someone had the brighter idea that maybe we should preserve these instead of systematically destroying them. But then most of the rest, when they started not destroying them themselves, many of the rest did perish to Allied bombing in World War II. So there have been reconstruction attempts on various lists. It's not 100% doom and gloom. And of course, you have the passenger arrival lists on the American side to mine for Bremerhaven departing immigrants, but not so much on the German side. Hamburg, on the other hand, from 1850 to 1934, those departure records are pretty much complete, and they are part of an Ancestry World subscription. Is one way to access them. There are the lists themselves, and then there are also handwritten lists that the Germans compile, handwritten indexes that the Germans compile that can both be helpful. They're in an awful sloppy handwriting, and that's why I point out about the handwritten indexes, because sometimes what's indecipherable in the departure lists themselves is something you can find them in the indexes, so you want a route that they left from Hamburg. That's the moral to that story. Now, arrival in America. Here we had contrasts to I've talked about in passing a little bit. Most of the 1700s immigrants arrived in Philadelphia. Philadelphia was the largest city of the American colonies, the number one port of entry for all ethnicities. And there was this construct, Greater Pennsylvania, roughly that ragged shape, to showing to the west of Philadelphia on the map, but everything from the Mid-Atlantic down to the backcountry of the Carolinas through the Shenandoah Valley. This was all one large German community to some extent, as far as communication, as far as migration, within that band. And then generations after the Revolution went west to Ohio, Kentucky, other areas, and started to seed the Midwest with Germans. The 1800s, the scene shifts from Philadelphia being the #1 port of entry to New York and New Orleans being the top ports of arrival for Germans. And their top destinations are the Midwest and also to Texas. And so you have some that come through the Mid-Atlantic after landing in New York, and you have others that use the Mississippi as their superhighway in the 1800s. So again, this is a dramatic difference, 1700s versus 1800s. When we talk about motivations, I sometimes get a little bit of pushback from people because I know I learned in school how the Germans, they came for religious reasons because they were stunted in Europe. You had to have the religion of your ruler, and so they were yearning for religious freedom. Well, not so much. It's a pleasant tale, and it does apply to the Anabaptists, your Amish, Mennonites, Church of the Brethren, people who baptized as adults as part of their theology. They truly were persecuted in Europe, virtually by all the German states. Whereas most of the first waivers were Lutheran and Reformed. They were mainstream Protestants, and it's not nearly as romantic to say that they wanted to come for land, but that's what they wanted to come for. Because the miserable part of their lot wasn't so much lack of religious freedom. It was the fact that they were essentially still serfs in the German states. Because Germany was still, in the 1700s, still pre-industrial. And well, it's two things. One, you really didn't, in most German states, you really didn't own your land. You essentially had what was the equivalent of a hereditary lease to that land. And then secondly, a lot of the German states, their rule was not primogeniture, where the oldest son inherits, or you decide, how to pass on your land. It was partible inheritance, or if you have 5 children and you have 50 rights to 50 acres, then each of the children get rights to 10 acres. Next generation has 5 children, each of them gets rights to 2 acres. If you ever see the German landscape from the air, it's an absolute crazy quilt of all these little plots of land. An acre here, a half an acre there, 2 acres here. And as a result of these partible inheritance rules is what you still see today. So that was one thing that they really had enough of, and was a big reason that a lot of people left in the 1700s. Is William Penn went on a couple of prospecting trips to the Palatinate, to say, hey, I'm gonna give you full rights to 100 acres of land or 200 acres of land, however much you want to buy, and it's going to be cheaper than the type of feudal obligations that you still owe to the lords here, and you owe it, and you never really you owe, but you never really owe. So that was the top motivation. As I noted, they really were still bound to the land in some way as serfs, and they needed to be manumitted. They needed to gain their freedom from the obligations of this serfdom. And as with many things government, I've done a lot of work in the Zeegan area of what's now North Rhine-Westphalia. And there they had as an exit tax what they called the 10th penny tax. In other words, it started as a 10% levy on your movable goods. Well, it started as the 10th penny, and they kept calling it the 10th penny tax. But by the 1700s, it actually took about half of the movable goods of the immigrants. But still, most of them were interested. About 3/4, it's estimated, did ask to be manumitted, pay the exit tax, and are on the records, which are great records, of course, and we'll get to that toward the end on how to try to access them. Only about 1/4 of them slipped out of Dodge under the cover of night, and therefore did not pay the tax. Ooh, I see some smiles over there. We got some people with law-breaking ancestors. And so way down on the totem pole compared to land, compared to wanting to not have continued obligations of serfdom. Way down is religious freedom. Really only applies as a top priority to the Anabaptists.
Excuse me, I have a question about the religious freedom.
Yes.
One of my ancestors supposedly was from Leipzig, married a woman from Lorraine, and 3 of their children were murdered in 1670 during a religious thing by Louis XIV. Does that mean they were actually in France at that point, possibly? Because they were Lutherans.
Well, if they were murdered by Louis XIV, I mean, he did invade various parts of Western Germany several times. If it was during a war, it would depend on whether it was during war or peace. If it's during peace, well, he would only be under their civil jurisdiction, in what's now France. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he really didn't have any religious crusades, other than he did kick the Huguenots out of France. He didn't kill them, he just kicked them out. We can talk about this later. Yeah.
Before you leave this,
Yeah.
could you address the situation of Reformed Germans, German Calvinists?
Yes, we're going to get to religion in a moment. Okay, in the 1800s, here's what we have a little different here. Is the world changes from a feudal world to a capitalist world. And so you have a whole lot more folks who came in the 1800s who were entrepreneurial, who were business owners, and they were coming for business opportunities in some cases, opportunity for betterment. There were also marriage restrictions in a lot of the German states where people could not legally marry unless the man was a landowner. And so as a result, you have a huge number of illegitimacies come about because people found ways around that. So, and also the avoidance of military draft was another spur for immigration in the 1800s. Because there was an increasing sophistication of the German states, led by Prussia, that instituted rather onerous draft rules that people wanted to avoid. And in many ways, the whole story of the 1800s in the German states is the increasing dominance of Prussia. It begins as a mostly eastern Berlin and east areas that are now in Poland, But when it was part of the coalition that defeated Napoleon in 1815, it gained a foothold in the Rhineland, and just kept going through the 1800s. Now let's talk a little bit more about religion. The contrast here is in the 1700s, as I mentioned previously. Overwhelmingly, those who came were mainline Protestant. About half of those who came in the 1700s were Lutheran. About a third were the Reformed, or also called Calvinists at times, or Zwinglians, because both John Calvin in Geneva, Switzerland, and Ulrich Zwingli in Zurich, Switzerland, they were the theological founders of the Reformed movement. There was also a small sprinkling of sectarians in the 1700s who came over, estimated at about 6,000 out of that 80,000 who came over. In the 1800s, it changes that it's roughly even numbers of Protestants and Catholics who come over. And part of that is, if you remember the map, how Bavaria becomes a key player in the 1800s, and Bavaria is virtually all Catholic. So that throws the numbers right there. Now, the church records, depending on the denomination, are often among the best things you'll use for researching both of the waves. The accessibility, the retention, their genealogical usefulness varies among the different religions. For those that practice infant baptism, the baptisms are a great substitute birth record. The marriages take the place of civil marriages, and burials are great substitute death records. As I said, it varies quite a bit from group to group. The best records are kept by the Lutherans and the Roman Catholics, because they were the most rigidly hierarchical of the religions that Germans practiced. And when systematization comes from above, that's usually a good thing as far as standardization of records. I'm not saying making any comment about the theology, but so both Lutheran records and Roman Catholic records are excellent by and large. The Reformed, many of which became part of what's now the United Church of Christ, their records are often also good, but the Reformed were never as well organized as their Protestant Lutheran counterparts. What you have in America a lot of times among the Reformed are a lot of private pastoral registers as opposed to congregational registers. And the survival of those a lot of times rests, quite frankly, with whether the widow of that particular minister threw them out or not. I mean, there are many examples of private pastoral registers that have survived, but we have to think that just about all pastors did keep them originally, and not all of them have come down to us. In Germany, I mean, these are just about all systematically kept on the parish or congregation level. Relatively few private registers. The Moravians are worth noting. Moravian is a nickname for the Unitas Fratrum, or Unity of Brethren congregation. It was protected in a Saxon state by Count Ludwig von Zinzendorf. He protected them in Saxony, and they came to America, to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and spread out to various other cells. They're worth noting because they keep excellent records, including not just baptisms, marriages, and burials, but also a congregational diary that is like a day-by-day recap of the goings-on of their community. And even if you don't have Moravian ancestors, your ancestor, if they lived near a Moravian community like Bethlehem or Lidditz, they may be mentioned in this congregational diary. So that they're an example of don't get tunnel vision and not use records of other faiths that your ancestors didn't particularly belong to. The Anabaptists, this is your Amish, your Mennonite, your Church of the Brethren, in general, don't keep genealogically useful church records. And this follows from the standpoint that they were persecuted in Europe, where keeping records of membership and so forth might have meant their martyrdom. So that's because they didn't have that tradition of record keeping in Europe. They didn't adopt it in America. And also the standpoint of if you're being baptized as an adult, you remember that baptism. You don't if it's an infant baptism, you don't remember your baptism, and you need a record of it. So it's a little bit different theory of things. Now I have seen Amish and Mennonite records, like records of their elders' names. There seem to be more Amish and Mennonites that put together family Bibles or family registers that have come down to us. So it's not to say that there are not records of Anabaptist families. It's just as far as church registers, they are ordinarily pretty much lacking. It's also worth noting, and this is going to be a segue to the next slide about evangelical versus evangelisch. In the early 1800s, there was kind of a revivalist movement that affected a lot of parts of Pennsylvania, and these small evangelical churches kind of sprang up like mushrooms. Later, they had a split, as many churches seem to do, between evangelicals and United Evangelicals. Then they came back together. Now most of them are part of the United Methodist denomination. For the most part, they have had baptism as adults, and therefore, I've seen relatively few registers of this denomination that have the detail of the Lutheran and the Reformed and the Catholic register. And then finally, the United Brethren, also an Anabaptist-based congregation. So again, not much in the way of genealogically useful records. It's okay. Perfectly cute me here. And this is a clarification that a lot of American-based denominations with ethnic German adherents have evangelical as part of their names, and it does confuse the bejesus out of people because it's, first of all, it has nothing to do with what the so-called evangelical conservative Christianity today. What it really comes from is the evangelisch denomination in Germany, which was a forcible merger by the Prussian king in the early 1800s of the Lutheran and the Reformed into one Protestant denomination. So just about all Protestant congregations in Germany today bear the name Evangelisch Church. If you go back before this forcible union, they were probably either Lutheran or Reformed is what they started out with. And you'll see if you go into the like if you look in the family history library catalog for a particular town's church records, you'll see if you get deep into the weeds of them, the registers, they're even Galish after a certain point, and they're Reformed earlier than that, or Lutheran earlier than that, or maybe the town had both a Lutheran and a Reformed church at one time before the merger. So the important thing is that you don't associate even Galish in Germany with that small evangelical denomination I just told you about, and also realize that they're going to be evangelical Lutherans. There's going to be the predecessor of the United Church of Christ was the Evangelical and Reformed Church. Just about all of them have evangelical in the title. And that, in some cases, it's a result of a carryover from the German Protestant merger church. Okay, have I thoroughly confused everybody on that point? I know. See me afterwards at my vendor table if you need more information about that. Now, let's talk about occupations. And this is going to follow up from what I said earlier about the motivations changing and so forth. In the 1700s, again, it's a pre-industrial economy. It's still a very agrarian economy in Germany and over here. So the people who are attracted are mostly farmers and some village occupations like a saddler or a cooper or a blacksmith or people like that. You need pioneer types because it's pioneer area that they're coming to. This is contrast to the 1800s where you have a lot more independent tradesmen, a lot more businessmen, and they're taking advantage of markets created by the settled areas, pioneered by those coming in the 1700s. It just follows, and it goes hand in hand with economic class. In the 1700s, many of the more prosperous peasants came, but again, because you had a feudal economy, you didn't have a quote-unquote middle class. You had the nobility and their cronies, and then you had everybody else who were peasants. It's estimated that about a third were indentured in some form, and I hasten to point out that even though about a third did not pay for their passage up front, that's what that means, that it's estimated that only about 1 in 10 actually served an indenture to a stranger. Now, what's up with that discrepancy of percentages? Historians such as Mariana Bocek, I believe I have one of her books in my bibliography, have shown that a lot of those who couldn't afford the passage up front, they had a conscious economic strategy where they might, say a typical family was a father, mother, an old in-law, 3 children, 2 of whom were teenagers. The 2 teenagers could be indentured for enough to pay for the passage for all 6 of them. Conscious economic strategy. Aaron Fogelman's works, historian Aaron Fogelman has shown that in many cases, those who just came over as a single person and truly were indentured to a stranger, as opposed to someone from their village who was already over here, or someone who was a relative already over here who immediately bought the indenture and patted him on the rump and said, "Be on your way." Someone who was indentured to a stranger, that was about 1 in 10, and a lot of those people never, once they served their indenture, never really reintegrated into Pennsylvania German society, never got married, never had children. Where I'm going with this is they're not your ancestors. That's the case. I'm not trying to claim that none of you have indentured ancestors. You may well, but someone who's a descendant of a Pennsylvania German who's indentured to a stranger is a rarity. And a lot of times it's kind of our romantic fiction, because it sounds so good that that your family line started humbly with an indentured servant. But a lot of times, if you interrogate the record, especially of old family histories, they see somebody got off the boat in 1750, and then the next record they see of them is 1760. Wow, they must have been indentured. Well, maybe that's possible, but maybe it's just that there were no records in the intervening time in those 10 years, or no records that you've actually found yet. So like I say, I warn people not to jump to conclusions on that. That's the 1700s. In the 1800s, you have more people from both the upper and the lower classes coming from the German states to America. Whereas 1700s, the only nobleman I know who came over was that Ludwig von Zinzendorf, the leader of the Moravians, and anyone else who usually I get at least one person in question and answer who will tell me very sincerely, well, there's a von on our name, and that means nobility, so we must have been nobility. And I find their family came over in 1740, and what my response is, if you're a German noble in the 1700s, you're not trading a castle for a log cabin in the woods. Just a lot of times the bonds were added later. So, yes.
During what time period were indentures used? I found one signed by an ancestor who was an alderman here in Philadelphia.
Up to the early 1800s. Up to the early 1800s. So that's then the 1800s is more fluid. You do have some upper class people because it's a capitalist world and they're willing to make some gambles to fulfill the markets and get even richer from various markets. Now I want to go over briefly on sources, and I see I'm running into a little bit of time stress here. I think I've babbled on some tangents a little bit, and I want to save a little time for question and answer. So I'm going to go through the sources, which are all listed in your handout, and then talk about just a few stereotypes, and then I'll take some questions and answers till 10:30. Prime sources for the 1700s. One of the most wonderful things that happened in the 1700s in Pennsylvania, at least as far as if you have ancestry German ancestry that came in that time period, is that the Pennsylvania legislature got paranoid, and they decided in 1727 that ship lists, entry lists, had to be compiled for every foreigner. Now, at that time, you were a citizen on both sides of the Atlantic if you came from the British Isles. So primarily, the quote-unquote foreigners were these Germans. And these ship lists and oaths of allegiance lists have come down to us. They've been published in Pennsylvania German Pioneers. And it's great because if any of you have Scots-Irish ancestry or know somebody with that, you know how difficult it is for that ethnicity to try to find the teeter-totter point. When did they come over? It's not impossible for the Scots-Irish, but it's very difficult. Whereas with the Germans, just about always you can find them in Pennsylvania German Pioneers. And that teeter-totter point, that's just great because after that, you know to look for American records. Before that, you know you're going to look for German records. In addition, the work includes the signatures of the males, age 16 and older, and those signatures, especially if you have a Johannes Miller. Everybody who has German ancestry will have at least one of those. Johannesnor. You can match up the signature as they got off the boat and swore their oath of allegiance, then with a later deed or will or sheriff's jury that they served on to prove that you have the right person. I also list Ned Berger, Hank Jones, and Don Yoder. They are all German immigrant specialists. And now I want to make note of Werner Hocker's immigration lists. I said earlier about the manumissions, where they had to buy their freedom from serfdom. Dear Werner Hocker lived to be 96 years old. He had a long retirement, and he spent it all extracting and compiling these manumission lists. Anything that you could find in southwestern Germany, the prime hotbed of where they came out of, and an English version of his most important books has been published by Boston Press. He actually has 10 different volumes, but there's one index volume that's in English. For the 1800s, a lot here has worked its way onto Ancestry.com. So I'm not going to individually. I'm actually going to talk about in the afternoon lecture about their German assets among the other major sites. But I also want to make a pitch that the Old Mormon International Genealogical Index. Who remembers when the IGI was on microfiche? Good to see some veterans along with me. I mean, that was kind of the original LDS database. It's still something that you can get by itself on Family Search, and of course you think, well, why would you recommend that when it's been superseded by much bigger databases? Well, sometimes I need to turn down the noise from the full search of Family Search. And since there are so many German church record abstracts in the IGI, sometimes I like to just go to the IGI to see what's there. See not just if my particular ancestor is there or some ancestor of someone I'm working for, but shipmates. See if I can fix a shipmate of someone they came over with to a village of origin. Well, there's a chance that the one I'm really looking for came from that same village. It's a good methodology. And speaking of methodologies, just want to briefly, I just talked about the searching the IGI, but also how important it is to look for every document you possibly can find of the immigrant ancestor or mentioning the immigrant. In other words, not if you find the tombstone, hey, that's great, but look for the church burial record too. See if perhaps there's an obituary or a death notice. Any one of those could have the village of origin information, and usually not all three of them will. So that's important. Also, use whole family genealogy. That is, branch out to the siblings, because you don't know which sibling might have inherited a family Bible that's now in the hands of a fifth cousin. But if you don't know you have that fifth cousin, you're probably not going to come in contact with that information. And then finally, we just want to put in a pitch for the concentric circle strategy. Well, what the devil is that? What that really means is if you find, say, in the IGI strategy that someone is from this little town, Geroldsheim, that's right where my finger is, that you found a shipmate in Geroldsheim. Well, then the concentric circle would be 5 kilometers out, then 10 kilometers out. All the different villages that are within that circle are then your next possibilities of where you're limiting that haystack to make the needle bigger. If you don't find, the exact village for your immigrant in the village, but you find one for a shipmate, well, that's a possibility of which area they might have come from. So now, Any questions? In the back.
I have a question about the first wave. You saw where you showed they settled on the Shenandoah and Pennsylvania, New York. What was the next part of this? Was there a pattern to the immigration after, or not immigration, but heading west? Like the Pennsylvania Germans go to a certain place, Virginia Germans go to another place?
Yeah. Oh, asking about that's fine. Greater Pennsylvania was where they settled originally. Where did they go from there? And the true answer is that there's not as many rules of thumb. But what there are is that they still often did travel in clusters. Just as they often came to America, that there were several families from the same village on the same ship. When they heard there was good land in Ohio or Illinois or whatever, it was usually not just one family from a Pennsylvania German village somewhere around here or west of here. It was usually a cluster of families that then left. And one of the tools I've found good to try to track that back are the often maligned county histories, county biographical histories, or the so-called moat books. You can never take anything in there 100% with a grain of salt. But I've seen a lot of references where they say, so-and-so's great-grandfather arrived in this area from Somerset, Pennsylvania, along with 5 other families. And that's pretty good information. You at least know then to check out Somerset County, Pennsylvania, the church records there, see if they sold land, and get the record in some land there. You, sir.
One of the things that I had forebears that came over in 1750 and 1751.
Classic first wave, 1750, 1751.
And I've been fascinated by what the voyages were like. And the best review of the voyage came from Henry Miller Miller, who wrote his autobiography. And he kept a daily record on the ship. Otherwise, I found very little. And I've also been looking for pictures of the ship at the time, right? And so if you could guide me to either of those.
Okay.
Other stories of
Okay.
voyages. And I guess attached to that is, I've been to the Moravian archive, and I do read German, but the problem is that most of the great stuff there is in 18th century German script. And they offer a 2-week course. I don't know if I can handle it.
Sure you can. Sure you can. Okay, to address your 2 previous ones. Narratives of the voyages. Please send me an email, and I'll send you a handout that I have. It's only about a dozen ones that I've uncovered, but I'll send that to you. Because there are some out there. It's limited. And you're right that Muhlenberg's is very good. And I was holding my breath that I was hoping you weren't going to say Gottlieb Middleburger's was any good, because that is almost pure propaganda. But it is a narrative of the voyage. And then second, as far as pictures of the ships, paintings of the ships, or what have you, my understanding is that Free Library of Philadelphia has a collection of some. I don't know more than that. So I think I got time for one more question. You, ma'am.
When they were going on the ship in the 1800s, did they have to produce documentation of who they were?
Okay.
Of any sort?
Did they have to produce? In the 1800s, did they have to produce documentation of who they were? They did have some sort of passport. Not many of these have survived to today, but I have seen a couple of from people that leads me to believe that it was required to have a passport to exit your particular state of residence in Germany, and then that was checked out at whatever your departure point was, Bremerhaven, Hamburg, Le Havre in France, and then that was also checked upon arrival.
What did you say about the marriage restrictions?
Some of the German states in the 1800s had restrictions that unless you were a owner of a certain amount of real property, you could not legally marry. Yes, one more.
The oath of allegiance that were associated with arrival here were to pledge allegiance to the crown. There was I understand there was a second oath of allegiance to denounce allegiance to the crown and allegiance to the colony of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That was taken.
Let me explain. In Pennsylvania German pioneers, there are three different lists, actually. There were three different lists that were supposed to be kept. The first was a captain's list that would be a list of every individual on that ship in the 1700s. Unfortunately, only a minority of the ship's captain's lists have actually survived. Secondly, was an oath of allegiance to the British king, and third was an oath of abjuration, denouncing. If they were Catholic, they were no longer owing allegiance to the Pope, and if they were Protestant, or denouncing any allegiance they had to a foreign king or prince or whoever. So usually the B. They call them the B and the C lists, the two oaths. The two oaths are usually just males age 16 and older. And if they were sick, a lot of times they stayed on board and didn't actually sign it. Sometimes people signed for others who were illiterate. So it's not a perfect record, but it's like I say, it's certainly a lot better than the average Scots Irish. So. That's the oath of abjuration.
Right?
Oath of allegiance and an oath of abjuration.
Those were taken on arrival.
Yes.
There was a second oath that was taken right before the Revolution, and again, it was males. They were basically looking for who was going to.
Okay, well that's an oath of allegiance to the United States of America.
Right.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. And that would be anyone of any ethnicity or any that was saying, well, we're no longer going to be a colonist and subject to the British king. We're now going to be a citizen of the United States.
But those were taken, at least in some of the areas around here, they were taken much the way the census was taken, and so you could tell who lived where by comparing the order.
It all depends on the particular area.
So where those are adopted.
Well, if they exist in the county courthouses. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.